Temperature rise will bring widespread devastation and unprecedented extreme weather.
New coronavirus cases emerge across the country.
Obesity rates have more than doubled in kids.
Cape Town is running out of water.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Vikas Pota. I'm the founder and CEO of T4. You know, this video that you've just seen about the world's best school prizes comes at an opportune moment just to remind you that our deadline is actually on the 1st of March, so not long to go now. And we've had some incredible schools come forward and share their best practices through our application form. And let's not forget, there are two major incentives to taking part. The first being, yes, obviously there is a sum of money at the end of that rainbow that says that, you know, your school, if you win, you'll get $50,000 to spend on a project that you wish for your school. The second and real benefit of the entire effort and endeavor is to create this global learning community of schools around the world who are interested in actually showcasing and celebrating and supporting each other in the development of best practices and expertise as a way of making our schools stronger. I can't think of a bigger agenda that comes out of the pandemic than that, actually. You know, yes, you know, teachers and all of your teachers are fantastically important to this, but we have to think in terms of institutions and institution building. And the way we do that is by taking research-backed, evidence-backed approaches to how we improve schools and therefore their systems and their communities, I think is quite fundamental. And so the prize is a great mechanism of contributing towards that discussion by sharing you know, what you do so well so that others can be inspired and also try to replicate your practice. Now, as with most other opportunities that we have, we obviously ask you where you're watching from. And so, you know, I know that already that there's a couple of friends from the Philippines who have put up comments. Hi, Jerry, watching from the Philippines. Tell us where in the Philippines, actually. We know it's a rather large country. We have Carl. Carl is one of our, if I'm not mistaken, one of our country ambassadors, new country ambassadors. Thank you, Carl, for joining and taking part. Chilakara, thank you so much for participating. And, you know, the thing is, the irony is that, you know, for StreamYard to work properly, and we want to see your names, just like we see Chilkaras or Carls or Jerry, you have to go to StreamYard and give them permission so that we can pull up your Facebook photo and your avatar when your comments. Otherwise, one of my own colleagues has put up this and has made this mistake where he talks about Facebook user. Who's Facebook user? I mean, there's billions of you. Actually, go to StreamYard. Whoever from the team is watching this, go to StreamYard and validate your account. And so we can, rather than ask people where they're watching from and their name, we'd also like to know who you are. And so thank you for that. Now, here we go. We have someone from Serbia who's joined us. We have someone who we don't know from the Philippines again. We have Bunli from Cambodia. Welcome, Bunli, and I think I'm speaking to you later today. We have Bijal Damani. Bijal, you need to go to Facebook, so streamyard.com/Facebook and give permission. This always happens to you, and you normally say namaste, but today you put your name in. Thank you so much. Lana, again, not wanting to let the cat out of the bag. Lana has been selected as a presenter for the teacher masterclasses for the Teacher Tech Summit. So welcome, Lana. You're watching on LinkedIn. Again, Bijal Damani has come on. Wafa is watching on YouTube from Tunisia. Thank you all for participating, and keep on telling us where you're from. We'll keep on pulling these comments up. Now, friends, as a believer in community, and I mean that very sincerely, actually, when people say to me community, that's pretty not a very dynamic word. It's very old worldy sounding. Do you mean something else? No, I actually do mean community. As a believer in community, I believe we can achieve the most incredible things. And so, for the Teacher Tech Summit, which you'll be all very familiar with and aware of, because it's coming up, and you can register at teachertechsummit.org on the 25th and 26th of March. We've assembled a range of partners. So there are 3 sets of partners. The first is our co-hosts. So the World Bank and Owl Ventures are our co-hosts. We have government partners, and I think we're going to get to 10 government partners for the Teacher Tech Summit by the time of the summit, which I think is fantastic. So these are ministries of education, either provincial or national, who are throwing their weight behind the Teacher Tech Summit, which is I think is fantastic. But then the third part of it is what we call a catalyst partnerships. Now, catalyst partners are organizations that we're aware of who have a reputation in actually talking about innovation in education and actually getting behind that movement. Now, they may be in the form of universities, they may be in the form of accelerator programs, they may be associations, they may be quasi-government organizations. There's a whole bunch of these. And all of them do incredible work in the world to promote innovation. And today, I'm really pleased that one of our catalyst partners, who actually individually and personally I've known for quite a few years, but the organization actually joins us as a catalyst partner, is Education Ventures Research. And my friend Laurie, who is the Chief of Staff and in charge of partnerships, joins us today. Laurie, welcome to T4 TV.
Thank you so much, Vikas.
And so, Laurie, there's a whole bunch of questions that we want to ask. And of course, this is an opportunity for you to also speak a little bit about your work and tell those that are watching. Obviously, T4 TV is a platform for our community who are predominantly teachers around the world. And you've seen where they've come from. I saw you taking notes backstage, where they're from. And we should perhaps just look at it a little more just to remind you. So we have, for example, someone from Bangladesh, Nazmul Haq. We have, I think this is Kate from Georgia. I can't understand the script, so I can't really say. We have Ramia from Egypt, which is fantastic, right? We have Anetka from Macedonia. And of course, I've talked about Lana, who is from the Balkans, and so on and so forth. Tell us in terms of, Laurie, tell us in terms of what is Education Ventures Research and why should teachers really care about your organization and what you do?
Great, thanks. Hello, everyone joining from around the world. Really exciting to see all the names popping up and delighted to be here with Vikas. Educate Ventures Research is an organization that is it's an EdTech startup that helps other EdTech startups, is the short answer. The longer answer is that we are focused on helping all parts of the education ecosystem, the EdTech ecosystem, really use data and evidence better for the benefit of all learners. And we do that in a couple of different ways. We're one of the accelerators that you mentioned. So we have the world's biggest research accelerator. So there are lots of accelerators out there helping EdTechs in terms of building their business or introducing them to venture capital or, all of those sorts of things. We're really focused on helping to provide a framework for companies to really start to understand, what their assumptions are about their product, how it works, and help them understand, does it work for the reasons they think it does? And so we help them become more research and evidence aware, bringing them through, a journey to help them understand and find and see the data, that they're collecting and link it up to, the questions and the work that they're doing. So that's one piece of our work is, very, very focused on EdTechs. For teachers, they're, of course, another really important part of that equation, and understanding data and evidence is key also for teachers and for schools to be able to start to have, a really firm grounding and comfort in terms of starting to bring tools into their school that will help achieve the outcomes that they're hoping for their learners. So that's two lines of our work, is working with EdTechs to help them use data and evidence more wisely, to ask themselves research questions that are thoughtful, to kind of evaluate themselves. And now we're also working with teachers to help them understand data and evidence that they have within their school already. How might they, apply that to questions they have or goals that they're trying to achieve, and marrying those two together, we think is going to be the way forward in terms of like getting around this what works question.
Yeah, I think it's a really fascinating approach you have, which is to think about research-based approaches. But tell us, Laurie, there's a lot of in the EdTech world in particular, what really happens is under muted breath, I would call it, there's this healthy level of skepticism about actually the validity of what teachers say. Do you find that, and how do you counter that?
Oh, I mean, I think that's dangerous. I mean, from our point of view, and I would say our company's point of view, and then from my own personal point of view, you not listening to what teachers have to say. I mean, a company would do that at their own peril. It's interesting. One of the most important parts of the support that we, provide the EdTechs who come through our accelerator is that opportunity to connect with teachers. So we tend to have sessions on Ask the Educator. That almost feels like a little bit of a dragon's den, where the EdTechs really get pushed again on their assumptions that they have about their end user, and they stress test that, and they always find that that's one of the most valuable experiences that they have. It really makes them kind of step back and rethink maybe how they're approaching a certain element of their product or their approach. So yeah, no, I wouldn't agree with that at all.
And tell us, in terms of you've decided to partner with the Teacher Tech Summit and with us. Tell us your rationale for doing so.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love the model that you laid out, in terms of that community. I don't find community old-fashioned at all. And in fact, I find it very dynamic, as I think that I like the Teacher Tech Summit because it is focused on teachers, first of all. The co-hosts, representing the World Bank and Owl Ventures and centered around this question of what works, for me, is really appealing, because it means increasingly that we have, the folks who are funding, all different kinds of programs saying, this question of what works is really important, and this understanding of data and evidence is increasingly important. So the more that we can hear, that becomes increasing, an incentive structure that's being built into, our ecosystem in a really important way. If you have investors saying evidence is important, if you have government saying we want to understand the evidence, to us, that's just key. So that's a big part of the reason why we're taking part.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that. Again, it's in terms of I think in terms of when I think about what you said about being a research accelerator, for those that firstly don't necessarily understand what an accelerator's purpose is, and then to layer on top of that research, can you just delve a little bit more into that in terms of what your organization does?
Sure thing. Yeah. So it's a research accelerator in the sense that we work with companies to help them define, what's their logic model. We use the structure of, a logic model, which is not an innovative tool. It's very well established in research, but helping companies draw out, using this framework, what are the inputs, what are the hope for outputs, what do they think the outcomes are for different users, and help them walk through, again, like unpacking the assumptions that they have behind it, step by step, so then they can start to formulate research questions that they might have about their product. And so the purpose for doing this, yes, Lana, yeah, research informs decisions. That's exactly right. Using this logic model, it ends up being a strategic kind of decision-making tool for the companies. And so helping them, establish and use this tool becomes something really, really important in their arsenal.
Fantastic. And tell me, Laurie, you also, after the summit, have your own event coming up that you're doing with our great friends at ISTE, actually.
Right.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, we are running the Make the Future Summit in the UK. This is and we're working, as you said, with our friends at ISTE, at the International Society for Technology and Education. Really excited. It is a two-night event, retreat style event for school teams in the UK in this iteration. In the future, we'd love to extend this model into other countries and globally. But for now, it's in the UK. It's for 2 days, and the focus is helping schools build a coherent digital strategy. So the premise being, all of the schools across the UK and as well as around the world have had to really try their hand at all different sorts of EdTech tools. And that was really, really exciting, that sort of 1,000 flowers blooming. But what hasn't happened is that kind of step back and that strategic look at, okay, what are the tools now that are going to really help us achieve the mission that we have, or the vision that we have as a school for our learners. So it's a moment. So following that moment of divergence where so much was tried, can we converge now? Can we help schools become more strategic about this? Kind of pick their head up from the day-to-day emergencies and the variety of different tools that they've used, and come out with something quite coherent.
Yeah, I mean, so, at the Teacher Tech Summit, we actually have a session on a meta theme, which is, how do Europe schools think about digital strategy as such, right? And so if you were to, like, in a nutshell, talk about 2 or 3 things, what would they be, so that those that are watching here can say, right, I want my school to be just more equipped to be working in this digital world. And of course, everyone has been forced into this new reality to some degree anyway. But what would you say are the bones of a strategy that they could perhaps, implement in their schools?
So I think it won't surprise you to hear, because I'm going to say, like, for us, the best way to build capacity around this is first to pay attention to the data.
Yeah.
So what data do you have at your disposal in your school currently? What is it? When is it collected? Where is it collected? What does it tell you? Does it answer questions that you have about your learners? It could be anything from your administrative data to the data that's coming out of tools that you're using, or data that you collect manually. Starting to get an understanding of that and what it tells you and what questions it can answer. That's the beginning, I think, of setting out your strategy, kind of just thinking about it in that way, becoming much more evidence aware. And then making sure that you're always linking, the tools that you're going to use to where you're trying to get as a school, like keeping that laser focus, I think, is also really, really important.
Thank you for sharing those. In final, what I want to do is, and sorry to put you on the spot again, but this Teacher Tech Summit that we have coming up is a pretty big deal as far as I see it, right? Because we're committing a lot of time and effort in this. And what would be the key things from the program that you have seen or remember that you think that will really hit the spot, as it were, right? Are there any topics, are there any sessions that you're looking forward to joining or participating in that you could perhaps share with the teachers?
I don't have the agenda in front of me right now because you are putting me on the spot.
Yeah.
I am really interested to hear from the government partners,
Yeah.
and hear how they're thinking about this question of what works. And the reason why I'm most interested in that is because so many governments, I give the example of Europe, but this is happening more broadly as well. Now have a mandate around digital transformation of their schools.
Correct.
And so what does that mean? What does that mean to them? What are the goals that they're trying to achieve, and how do they think they're going to get there? That to me is like such a critical part of this conversation. And of course, it has massive impact for each and every one of the teachers who are going to be part of the summit. So, kind of making that connection between what's happening in their thinking and what's going to happen in the classroom, I think is, one of the most fascinating pieces.
So one of the reasons that I get very excited about the Teacher Tech Summit is that we have a teacher masterclass format as well on the Saturday, where we're going to find teachers who will be doing these kinds of things, doing a show and tell. So how do I create engaging digital content? How do I assess using online learning tools? How do I ensure learner safety in online learning? How do I design effective digital pedagogies? And how do I incorporate new technologies like virtual reality and augmented reality to enable better learning? And these are practical sessions by teachers from around the world who are going to be saying in a very succinct fashion, in terms of from their context, how they do things. So these are not just in the rich world. They're not just in Europe, but these are schools that have been selected from around the world, given their context in public and private education, that will be putting forward solutions from their own experience and actually telling you the tools that they use. And always, last year in particular, we had humongous take up for the Teacher Tech Summit for that particular segment of the event. And I'd encourage everyone to show up for sure for that.
Yeah, I think that piece around digital pedagogy is, for me, that's a really critical piece. How do we think about teaching and learning, in the context as we do it increasingly alongside really smart digital tools? What does that human computer interaction look like? And how does that help our learners?
No, absolutely. Laurie, thank you so much for your time today, and I really appreciate your partnership for the Teacher Tech Summit. I want to remind everyone that the Teacher Tech Summit is on the 25th and 26th of March. You can register on teachertechsummit.org. We still have a long time to go before the registrations and everything. And my experience shows that in the last week, it all goes nuts, actually. Everyone wakes up and says, I want to register, I want to go. And we'll get a lot of registrations, I'm sure, going forward. But we already have nearly, I would say, 7,000-8,000 teachers already registered, which is fantastic from around the world. But before that, the reason why we're going slow on the Teacher Tech Summit's registration is because we have this other deadline of the world's best school prizes. My friends, 1st of March is the deadline there. It's round the corner. And we want to focus all your energies in making sure that your school actually takes a step forward and applies to become part of a community there. And I think it's a really neat and interesting way to actually, for your school to contribute towards the creation of public goods that can result in other schools also developing practices like yours. So please go to worldsbestschool.org. And I look forward to seeing you in a couple more days with a few more of our Catalyst partners. And I wish you well. Laurie, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you for your partnership.
Thanks, Vikas.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.